If you can believe it, this channel started almost 11 years ago when I was riding my very first Yamaha R3. And since then, the entire beginner bike category has changed. Some beginner motorcycles have grown into genuinely great bikes you can ride for years, while others have completely lost all reason to exist. So today, we're ranking nearly every beginner bike you can buy in 2026, from the S-tier legends to the F-tier turds you should run away from. Let's dive in. All right, so for ranking beginner motorcycles, we kind of have to start with the R3. It just kind of feels right. For years, this was like the beginner sport bike. That's why I chose it. It was approachable, reliable, and it still looked cool with the R-bike styling. It makes about 42 horsepower from a 321cc parallel twin, and it starts just under $5,500, which is still a solid value today. The problem is just time. The platform's getting old. It's a decade old at this point. They haven't changed the frame or the motor at all. And next to newer 450 class bikes, it just feels small, kind of underpowered, and less premium overall. It's still good, it's just no longer like the default option. So I'm going to place it into B tier for today. And speaking of bikes that struggle to justify their existence in today's market, next up is the CFmoto 300 SS. And unfortunately, this bike exists in a really bad spot. On paper, it's a solid beginner sport bike with a 292cc single-cylinder engine making about 29 horsepower and a price point that is reminiscent of the good old days of 2015. The problem is simple. The 450 SS exists, and that bike is faster, better equipped, and barely costs more money. Which means buying the 300 SS today feels like a bit of a foolish decision. The used prices indicate this. People cannot give these bikes away. There's just no good reason to choose this over newer options. It's an F-tier turd. Run away immediately. All right, let's talk about a bike that looks like it should be way cooler than it actually is, the Triumph Scrambler 400X. Now, visually, I think Triumph nailed it. It's classic Scrambler aesthetic. It's got the cool little details like the fender and headlight guard. It's got great showroom appeal. It uses the same 398cc single of the Speed 400, making about 40 ponies with the price of just over $6,000. Now, the issue is that it doesn't really scramble very well, and compared to the Speed 400, it's just a more compromised street bike pretending to be something it's really not. It's not bad, but it's not great either. I'm gonna put it in the C tier for today. But thankfully, Triumph didn't miss the mark everywhere because the Speed 400 is honestly one of the most interesting beginner bikes to come out in years, and it's one of the category leaders. The same 398cc single making the same 40 horsepower, but here, the formula actually works. It's lightweight, it's neutral ergonomics, and it's got a genuinely stylish execution. And it's been a smash hit all over the world, and I have genuinely enjoyed riding one to review when they first came out. It can feel a little toy-like at times since they're about 3/4 the size of a normal motorcycle, but overall this is a really strong entry into the beginner space and a really smart move for Triumph. Smaller stature riders will appreciate this one. We're launching it into A tier. So another new and interesting addition to the beginner bike category is the Aprilia RS 457. Now on paper, this bike almost looks overqualified. The 457 has a 270-degree parallel twin that's A2 compliant and makes 47 horsepower, and it's got really cool styling and a premium fit and finish that punches way above any typical beginner bike. Any hesitation comes down to practicality, because it might be more well-equipped than the average new rider even needs, plus there's the question of Aprilia's small dealer network combined with the Italy by way of India production. It raises some reliability questions. I think it's still really cool, but it's hard to make it a universal recommendation, at least for the time being. But I think it's still a firmly A-tier choice. Now, next up is one that you may not have thought about, the Honda NX500, formerly known as the CB500X. This is about as sensible as a beginner bike can get. It uses Honda's 471cc parallel twin, making around 47 ponies, with upright ergos, some classic touring chops, classic Honda reliability. Pricing lands at just under $7,000, which puts it a little above the average for the category, but this motorcycle is full-sized and mature, just like your mom. The problem is the lack of emotional appeal. Just like your mom. It does everything well enough, but it's nothing exciting. It's incredibly practical, incredibly usable, and just a little boring. We're going to put it in the B tier for today. And speaking of bikes that are less than exciting, there's the Yamaha MT-03. This is basically the naked version of the R3, using the same engine, 321 cc's and 42 horsepower, with pricing right around $5,000. It's lightweight, approachable, super easy to ride, all good beginner bike traits, but the issue is that naked bikes rely on torque and character, and the MT-03 just doesn't have a whole lot of either. And much like the Speed 400, it suffers the same like 3/4 scale motorcycle size issue, which is going to be a problem for larger riders. But it's fine if you're a smaller statured rider, but I think better options exist. Great bang for buck and Japanese reliability though. You can kind of think of this as like a plus-sized Grom. We're going to put it in the C tier. Now, if you want a beginner bike that actually feels ready for a little adventure, getting off-road, off the beaten path, the KTM 390 Adventure makes a lot of sense. It uses KTM's proven 399cc single cylinder making about 45 horsepower, paired with long travel WP Apex suspension, upright ergonomics, and surprisingly advanced electronics for the class. KTM clearly knows what they're doing in the ADV space and the beginner bike space, so they just kind of smushed those together, and here you go. But the downside is value. For nearly $8,000, it's starting to get a little expensive for what you're actually getting, especially as competition heats up around it. $2,000 more and you're knocking on the door of the Honda Transalp. Still very capable this bike is, but just not quite the obvious choice in the baby ADV segment. We're going to place it in the B tier. And then there's the Honda CB300R, a bike that I didn't even know Honda still made. I thought they discontinued this thing. It's powered by a 286cc single cylinder making about 31 horsepower, and while it's lightweight and typically very affordable, particularly on the used market, the platform is starting to show its age. Compared to newer bikes, it feels slow, basic, and a little forgotten by the market. Because you gotta remember, Honda made this bike to compete against the Ninja 300 way back in 2013. Because sure, Hondas are reliable, but today there are simply better performing and more modern options if you're willing to spend just a little bit more cash. But hey, if it's between this and a CFmoto 300 SS, well, you know what to do. We're placing it in D tier. The Kawasaki Eliminator 450 is essentially a cruiser version of the same Ninja 500. It uses the 451cc parallel twin, which means smooth and approachable performance for newer riders. The problem is it lacks personality. I mean, the name of this thing should have listed a little bit more, right? Because it feels more like a reskin than a fully realized motorcycle, and compared to other beginner cruisers, it just doesn't stand out in any meaningful way. It's totally fine, it just doesn't do anything for me personally. C tier. And now we get into one of the biggest question marks in the beginner bike world, the bike that you probably have on your short list, the CFmoto 450 SS. I still don't know what to make of this bike. I've ridden it on road and on track, and I'm still a little confused. On paper, it looks like God's gift to motorcycling. All of the Instagram squids seem to think so anyway. It uses a 449cc parallel twin with a cross-plane crank, which is pretty sweet. Makes about 50 horsepower, it's got a lot of tech, and a price that undercuts most competitors. The issue is China. Is it a genuine industry disruptor or just a bike that looks better on a spec sheet than it holds up to in long-term use? Build quality, resale, and long-term ownership are still big unknowns. And look, I know the broccoli-headed twinks are going to say, they've had it for 2 years, long-term ownership is solidified. I know you guys live month to month, but 2 years is not long-term. Plus, that whole CCP thing might be a deal breaker to some. Too many unknowns, we're putting it in the C tier. The 450 NK is basically the same story. It's the same engine, same value proposition, same unanswered long-term questions, just without the fairings. C tier.
For 2026, we mixed it up a little bit. No more middleweight sport bikes. This Aprilia 200 V4 Factory is our newest giveaway motorcycle, and it is truly a spicy little meatball. Listen to that thing. Head over to the website, become a member for your best chance to win. Now, if you'll excuse me, you can get back to watching the video. I'm going to take this thing for a ride.
So I suppose this is just the China portion of today's video. The entry-level ADV segment, let's talk about the CFmoto Ibex 450. It's bringing some serious heat. A lot of people absolutely go gaga for these bikes online. Performance, features, price, and capability that rivals bikes that cost a lot more and are a lot more stature, but it provides a lot of motorcycle for $6,500. But there is some hesitation. Long-term ownership, resale value, reliability, but if they can continue to prove solid, I can see them ascending the ranks. But we're going to go high C tier, flirting with the B tier, but I just can't bring myself to put it there just yet. Now, after all these maybes and question marks, let's talk about a beginner bike that's been proving itself for years now. Husqvarna Svartpilen 401, one of my absolute favorites in the category. Built around KTM's proven 399cc single, making about 45 horsepower, this thing hits a sweet spot few bikes can manage. It's lightweight, cool, fun, and packed with interesting goodies. It's unique without being too specialized, well equipped while being value driven. You can pop around town or do some light scrambling or just make some old timers scratch their heads because they've never seen a bike that looks quite like this before. It's been a Yami Noob favorite beginner bike for years now, and I'm proud to say that in 2026, it once again finds itself in the S tier. For being all about approachability, Honda's beginner bike game is kinda lacking. The CBR 500R has always been a disappointment to me. It uses a 471cc parallel twin that makes about 47 horsepower, which is fine for the category, but the weight is kind of ridiculous, and it makes this bike feel underpowered. This thing weighs over 420 pounds. That is crazy for a beginner bike. Compared to lighter and more modern competitors, this bike is expensive and lackluster. Even if they dropped the price recently, even if it has winglets right now, I do not care. It's a D-tier motorcycle. Unfortunately, the naked version doesn't completely solve the problems haunting Honda's 500s. The CB500F, which is now named the CB500 Hornet, I guess. I think Honda's kind of undergoing a transition period, uses the same engine as the CBR and makes the same power. It's a bit lighter, but not really. It's 40 pounds heavier than a Z500. And that makes a big difference for beginner riders because it's going to mean the difference between gaining confidence and dropping the bike because you couldn't pick it over after it leaned over a bit too much. The CB500F is competent and a bit cheaper than the CBR, but it's not the most exciting or value-driven choice in the category. C tier. Now, the KTM Duke 390 is basically the opposite philosophy of these Hondas. Lightweight, punchy, and packed with features, with some cool, aggressive orange styling. I think this thing looks pretty sweet. It uses the 399cc single, making 45 ponies we mentioned in the Svartpilen 401, paired with chassis components and tech you don't normally see at this price point. It feels energetic, modern, and genuinely exciting without becoming intimidating for newer riders. And despite KTM's reputation, this has quietly become one of the more reliable bikes in their lineup, which, hey, maybe that's not saying much, but it's still pretty good. Tons of value, tons of personality. We like this one. We're putting it in the A tier. But not every beginner bike has to feel small and frenetic. The Royal Enfield INT 650 brings a completely different approach. It uses a 648cc parallel twin, making about 47 ponies, wrapped in classic styling that gives it real big bike presence without intimidating performance or price. It feels more premium and substantial than it really has any right to. It's got cool paint, simple mechanics, and tons of customization potential. It's approachable, stylish, and easy to grow into, almost like the modern equivalent to the Evo Sportster. Call me crazy, but I'm feeling an A tier on this one today. Now, if you're a beginner who wants to flirt with dirt, the Honda CRF 300L Rally is one of the best options out there. I've been saying it for years. It uses a 286cc single cylinder, making about 27 ponies, but the real magic is in its versatility. It's lightweight, affordable, incredibly reliable, and genuinely capable for street duty or light off-road use. The Rally trim adds wind protection and a bigger fuel tank, making it more tailored for longer rides. It's a really fun bike with a great price and looks too. I think it's unique, interesting, and you gain my respect of having one. A tier. It's time for some F tier junkers, baby. The CFmoto 300NK is just the naked version of the 300SS. It has all the same problems we talked about before. No need to rehash it. F tier. The BMW G310GS or 310R, I don't like these. And if I didn't like the 1300GS, why would I like a cheap Indian version of it? It reads as entry-level BMW, but it's just a budget commuter bike with a premium badge. The engine is underwhelming, the price is hard to justify, and the experience doesn't feel very BMW. You're just paying for the logo. The jury's still out on the new F450 GS because it hasn't come out. I might have to get my hands on one and see if they ever launch it. But for now, the 310GS and 310R both get F tier. Hot take time. The Honda Rebel 300, while being a very good bike for what it is an F tier bike to buy. Let me explain. It's an MSF training tool, and for that, it's great. Incredibly approachable, incredibly slow, low seat height, cheap, perfect. But it's not a bike you actually want to own. It's so boring, so underwhelming, and the Rebel 500 exists and fixes every limitation the 300 has. It doesn't make any sense. The Rebel 300 is an MSF bike, and if you're not at the MSF, don't buy one. F tier. As I mentioned, the Rebel 500 is the superior buy. It's basically the default beginner cruiser, and it earns that title fairly, because it uses Honda's 471cc twin that is a bit of a stinker in a sport or naked bike, but actually works pretty well in the Rebel. It's got low seat height, manageable power, you are not going to have this thing get away from you, and it's not too boring to live with and has a decent aftermarket. It's easy to grow with or live with for more than a month. I think it's an A-tier bike, at least as far as beginner cruisers go. The Kawasaki Z500 uses the same DNA as the Ninja 500. It's got the 451cc parallel twin that's the current iteration of the tried and true platform. It's smooth, predictable, and fun to ring out. The only thing really working against the Z500 is that it's a Z bike, and these things are just not easy on the eyes. It doesn't land for everyone. It's mechanically excellent, as a beginner naked bike should be, but I think it's just kind of ugly. But all things considered, it's still an A-tier bike. And finally, the bike that still defines the beginner sport bike category, the uncontested king of the castle, the Kawasaki Ninja 500. The platform has been around forever, and it shows. The 451cc twin makes nearly 50 horsepower and 32 foot-pounds of torque. It's kind of sporty, but still comfortable and confidence-inspiring. In its latest trim, it's almost like a baby sport touring machine. It's a relatively handsome machine. I am partial to the KRT edition paint schemes on these, and I think these look pretty nice. It's one of the easiest motorcycles to recommend to a new rider because it's just been proven to be the right choice so many times. This thing's basically a mousetrap. It's a solved problem. It's just the default beginner sport bike. It's gotta be the S tier. And lastly, the Kawasaki Versys 300. Why are we still making this thing? Slow, outdated, and completely outclassed. And honestly, if it were actually interesting, it wouldn't be the last bike we're talking about. D tier. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of today's marathon tier list video. Let's give a quick shout out to our editor, Josh, who had to piece that all together. Thank you very much, Josh. What did you think about our ranking? What bikes did I wrongfully omit? The Honda SCL 500? Get the hell out of here with that fake Scrambler looking ass. See you guys later. Fact: octopuses have 3 hearts, and 2 of them stop beating when they swim, which is why they prefer crawling. Goodbye.